Let me ask you something. What if the history that we all know, from the ancient Romans right up through the Middle Ages, what if it wasn't something that just naturally happened, but was actually deliberately constructed? What if our entire timeline is based on a hidden mathematical code? Okay, let's dive into the theory presented in the book, The Well-Constructed Chronology.
This quote from historical analyst Eugen Gabovich is really the core idea for this entire explainer. And the idea behind it is pretty radical. What we read in history books isn't the past itself. It's just a representation of it, a model. And models, well, they can be flawed. Or, as we're about to see, they could even be intentionally faked.
So we're going to explore this idea in 5 steps. First, we'll clarify the difference between the past and history. Then, we'll look at the traditional tools we use to measure time. After that, we'll uncover a supposed code in our chronology, see how entire eras might have been constructed, and finally, we'll run into some really startling historical doppelgangers.
All right, let's start with the foundation. Mario Arndt's book makes a crucial distinction that, honestly, most of us probably overlook. There's a huge difference between what actually happened and what was written down about it.
Now, to investigate this historical model, the author uses a method he calls historical analytics. You basically look at official history as if it's a system, something you can analyze for its internal logic, for patterns, and for any possible contradictions, almost like a programmer debugging a piece of code.
So here's the key takeaway. The past is simply what was. It can't be wrong, we just can't ever know it completely. History, on the other hand, is the story we tell about the past. And that story, that model, can absolutely be inaccurate, flawed, or, according to Arndt, even purposefully invented.
So how do we even organize the past in the first place? Well, we use timelines, eras, that are anchored to specific events. These are basically the pillars of our timeline. So let's take a look at these traditional tools before we, just like the book does, start to question them.
Here are the big ones, right? The anchor points. Counting by Olympiads in Greece, the years since the founding of Rome, the Seleucid era in the East, the Diocletian era, and of course, our own Christian calendar. To us, these seem like organic, independent systems that grew over time. But are they really?
And this is where we get to the turning point. When analyzing these supposedly independent timelines, Arndt claims to have stumbled upon something completely unexpected, hidden mathematical patterns that connect all of them. It's like finding a secret code running through our entire chronology.
The key to this code seems to be this unassuming number 529. But why 529? I mean, what does this number have to do with the founding of Rome or the Greek Olympiads? Well, the answer is pretty startling.
Just look at this simple calculation. You take the start year of the Greek calendar, 776 BC, and the Roman one, 753 BC. The sum, 1529. And you can break that down into 1,000 plus, you guessed it, our key number, 529. A complete coincidence? According to the book, this is just the beginning of the code.
The book argues that this connection isn't a one-off thing. Instead, it's supposedly part of a much larger, systematic blueprint that was used to design our entire ancient and medieval timeline. And this method allegedly runs through all of antiquity. The Jewish world era? It comes out to 9 times 529 minus 1,000. The 2 main Babylonian eras combined? Exactly 2 times 529. The Byzantine world era? That's 11 times 529, adjusted by another era. It's as if all these independent calendars were artificially pieced together from the same few numerical building blocks.
So here's the crucial point. If these calculations are correct, then our calendars aren't the product of a long, random evolution. They would be the result of a conscious design, a construction made on a drawing board. Our history would have been literally designed by the numbers. So if the timeline is artificial, what does that mean for the events placed within it? This is where the book brings out its most powerful argument, the phenomenon of historical doppelgangers. It claims that entire life stories and event chains were essentially copied and pasted into other parts of the timeline.
Let's take this example. Theodoric the Great in the 5th and 6th centuries, and Otto the Great in the 10th century. The parallels are striking. They become king, they become rulers of Rome, and they win a legendary battle, all separated by an almost exact time gap of 462 years. A coincidence?
Or let's look at Byzantium. Here we have 2 alleged pairs of emperors. First Phocas, then Heraclius. About 470 years later, first Nicephorus III, then Alexios I. According to the book, the circumstances of how they came to power and the length of their reigns show some really startling similarities. And here is a particularly famous example. Charlemagne, who dies in 814 AD.
Exactly 471 years later, another major ruler named Charles dies. Charles I of Anjou, who is also called the Great by his contemporaries. The book argues that these aren't two different people, but one copied biography.
So let's quickly recap what the book presents to us. The fundamental idea is that history is just a changeable model. This model, the theory goes, was built according to an artificial mathematical plan, with the number 529 as a core building block. And the shocking result of this construction? Apparent historical doppelgangers, copied biographies separated by precise intervals of time.
Now, this explainer has presented the theories from a very provocative book. We haven't tried to judge whether they're right or wrong, but the central question they raise is one that sticks with you and really makes you think. What if the history we've been taught is just one of many possible stories? What if our history actually needs to be rewritten?